New York. We're right in the middle of our week-long 10th anniversary celebration. And in thinking about some of the things to share with you this week, I stumbled in the archives on a very special morning for me back in 1970. Now, I had been doing the morning show, the early morning show, 6 a.m. to 10, from July of that year. And one of the artists that we started to hear vague rumblings about toward fall was this fellow from England named Elton John. On the strength of the Elton John album in this country, he received a great deal of press attention and came over to appear live. Had just done a showcase on the West Coast and something on the East Coast, was preparing for a gig at the Fillmore East, not even as the headliner. Leon Russell headlined that show, and McKendree Spring was the opening act, Elton John in between somewhere. And it was a week after this broadcast at a place down the street where an album called 11-17-70 had its start as a live radio concert in New York City. It is one of my contentions that success changes people, even if it is not visibly. When your lifestyle changes, when you go from anonymity to huge success, there must be residual changes in your life. And what you heard last night on the Dennis Elsa show was Elton John in the absolute throes of superstardom, headlining at the Garden a couple of years back, with John Lennon stopping by for a guest appearance, and Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds is a monstrous hit in his career. The Elton John you will listen to this hour as a follow-up to Dennis's program last night is quite a different one, I think you'll agree. This was Elton and Bernie Taupin on a Wednesday morning from about 9:15 until 10 o'clock, trying to make it in the States and visiting with us at WNEW-FM in New York. This is exactly how it went down. That's Elton John and Your Song at 16 minutes after 9 o'clock on a Wednesday morning. Pete Fornatale at WNEW-FM in New York. I was thinking earlier that when you are in a position of presenting music before the public on a 7-day-a-week basis, 4 hours a day, you really get to the point where the things you choose to play at home for your own relaxation are those that stay closest to your heart. And for the last 4 months or so, in my own particular case, the Elton John album has spent more time gathering mileage on my turntable than any other I can think of. And the reasons for that are probably obvious to the people who listen to the station. It is a pleasure to welcome Elton John and Bernie Taupin to our humble surroundings.
Good morning. A bright and breezy morning. Good morning here from Elton John and Bernie Taupin.
I must apologize for the absolute ungodly hour to bring someone before our audience.
That's quite right. They're paying us $28,000 for this.
Well, listen.
My God, we left out of bed at 3 miles an hour.
Elton, this is the beginning of what will encompass a lot of personal appearances for you in this country. Is it your first mass exposure to American audiences?
Well, it's the first mass one. We came over about 8 weeks ago and did a mini tour. We wasn't really a tour. We played the Troubadour in Los Angeles for a week, and then the next week in San Francisco, we played the Troubadour there. And then we came to New York for exposure.
In the Jim Morrison sense of the word?
No. It was all very decent. Well, we played Philadelphia Electric Factory, which we're playing again this week, folks. And then we went home and did about 25 weeks' work in 1 hour, and then decided to come back. I came back about 2 weeks ago for a holiday to Los Angeles, and we played Boston last week, the Tea Party, which was very good. We're just starting this weekend on our massive campaign to capture the hearts of the American youth, folks.
Which will take you
all over, man. Yeah. We're going to Philadelphia, Baltimore, Los Angeles, San Francisco, back to New York, Chicago, Minneapolis, Bridgeport, places like that.
Do you get to see...
And I'm really excited about it. No, I really am.
Do you get to see any of the cities that you visit, or is it a hotel and stage thing?
Well, I know Los Angeles very well. And San Francisco,
we stayed there.
because I mean, like, we stayed in Los Angeles for a week, and then we stayed in San Francisco for a week, and that was easy to get to know, really. Philadelphia I quite like. Everyone said, everyone goes to sleep in Philadelphia, but I quite liked it. First time I came to New York, I hated it. Really did, couldn't stand it. But it's not so bad this time. He said that Bernie and I, when we were walking anywhere, seemed to attract all the freaks, they would sort of tap me on the shoulder and ask me for spare change and things like that. And people just stand and talk to you at traffic lights and things like that.
We think we're friends.
You think we're friendly. Well, it's a very strange city, but I got used to it now. It really takes a while to adjust to New York.
Yeah, it is hard for one like myself who has spent all of my life here to identify with what it must be like to come to it.
But as I say, we're getting used to it now. I really all the cities we've been to have been really friendly. All the people have been very nice. And they Bernie, been nice, and they
Bernie,
nice.
You're
Lady the other day, nice lady.
Lots of nice ladies, I'd imagine.
Especially the ones in Boston. TV in joke, which no one will get, except David Rosner and Margot Gurian, who might be listening.
Perhaps.
Bernie,
your role in Elton's career is almost
almost over.
Finished when there is a revealed first here. All right, that's fine. Seriously though, you have a function which once a recorded product is finished, you're almost out of the picture. Why aren't you home relaxing? What is it about the rigors of a live tour that
you can't bear to miss out on anything?
Is that it?
No, I just like being there. It's true. I don't want to miss out on there. If anything good's going to happen, I want to be there while it's happening.
He worries, you see. I mean, I don't worry at all about things. I really don't get sort of worried before I go on stage. I don't get worried about anything. Bernie sort of, before I go on stage, he sort of loses a handful of hair, goes grey, has about 3 babies, and sort of usually sits in the back of the dressing room while we're on stage because he can't cope with watching us because he's so nervous. And I really don't get nervous at all. And he's sort of really a shivering wreck. By the time I come off stage, he's lost about 5 stone,
But the thing was, I wasn't going to I was coming on the tour, but I wasn't going to go to all the places, I mean, I was going to stay in one kind of place a bit longer. But now it looks like I'll probably kind of end up going everywhere.
Do you not have any performing desires of your own?
No, can't say that on the
air. Musically speaking, of course.
No, not really. I mean, everybody says, isn't it strange that you don't play anything? But I mean, as I always say, if I played any form of instrument, we'd probably clash, the musical kind of.
How far back does this partnership go?
About to the back of the wall. I can't move back any further because the microphone was here. No, it goes back to 3 years ago. 3 years ago. 3 years ago this year. 3 years this year. We've been together now for 3 years. Excuse me, we're always like this. It's like Elton and Doris Waters, but you wouldn't get that. 3 years ago, I was playing in a group, and Bernie was chopping up wood somewhere or something like that. And there was an advert in a paper for songwriters from a record company, and talent. Record company needs new talent, so of course I immediately wrote in, and so did Bernie. Only Bernie didn't post the letter, he threw it away, and his mother posted it for him, which was, that's how fate takes a hand. And we got together, I went up to the record company. He's never talked to me. Get out, Taupin, get out! I'm trying to tell this story which I've never told before.
Interrupt me, I can interrupt you.
And I went up to the record company and said, listen, I can write songs, but I can't write lyrics. And they said, well, this little mangle-wurzel's written in from the countryside. And so that he'd really like to write lyrics. And so I got together with him. And
I would like.
And we've been together ever since. The first year and a half we wrote rubbish, absolute crap. We wrote just bubblegum type stuff because we had to. We were under pressure from our music publisher. And it was due to a guy called Steve Brown coming that we decided to write our own stuff because he said, do your own thing, baby doll. And we've never written for anybody ever since. We just write for ourselves,
What, with a little brown bag?
We've sort of been writing seriously, really, for about a year and a half now, and it's gradually sort of built up from there. The stuff we wrote before we started writing for ourselves was absolutely appalling, abysmal rubbish. I've never heard anything so bad. And we actually, my mother keeps all the demos, you know, so we tied up in velvet ribbons and everything. And she started playing them, and just before we came, I just couldn't believe it. We were on heaps on the floor with laughter, you know, some of the things we wrote, we couldn't believe it. It was all, when we started out, it was just the end of the era of the psychedelic canyons of your mind and the Lemonade Lake bit, you know? And, it was just unbelievable. So, I think we got ourselves together now, Taupin.
Well, this album literally came out of nowhere with a tremendous impact in this country.
I can't understand it, I really can't, because it wasn't a hit album. It got to 45 in England, which is nothing, you know, doesn't mean a thing. And I was on Uni, and I really hadn't heard of Uni, and people said, oh dear, you're on Uni Records, what a drag. And so I said, oh well, you know, we just had to take the rough with the smooth. But they've done an incredible job. They got the album right up the charts. They sold a hell of a lot of albums, and they're really a together company. They've really worked very hard. I can't believe that it's where it is, and I'm knocked out, you know. So.
Now, it is probably the most successful album of its kind, which leads me to the fact that it is one of the most... It is very tastefully produced. There is such a tendency when a group of musicians is unleashed upon an album, to the degree that I imagine musicians were unleashed on this one, to so overdo something. But that is not the case, you know. Now, how do you find a response when you're playing live with just a bass and a drum and yourself on piano? Is there a difference in audience response who are expecting the violins?
Yeah, there is. It's great. When I did the album, people said, oh, you must do an orchestral concert, you know. Really suck it to them and do the album on stage with a big orchestra. And I said, well, that would be a completely bad taste. It would be a rush job, and it would, you know, it's not what I'd like to do one, but not yet. I'm not ready for it. And besides, if I did that in England, they'd lump me into an orchestra thing, and I'd be a Lawrence Welk for the rest of my life, you know. Yeah. So I thought, no thanks, no thanks. So I decided to get the band together under great pressure, because I didn't want to work, and people said, well, you have to get a band together. So I just said, right, no guitar, piano, bass and drums. And on stage we do some of the stuff from the album, but we do it in a completely rearranged way. We have to, you know.
Sure.
But it comes across very well. People come to see us, do expect to see orchestra, you know. They really do. I can't believe it. But they go away after I sort of destroyed the piano or set fire to it, and they think, God, you know, I wasn't expecting that.
I think American audiences were spoiled by the Bee Gees when they used to tour with an 80-piece string section.
But they still, you know, that was tastelessly done. And what I'm going to do now is get the funky thing going with the band, and everybody think, all right, Elton John, I'll go and see him in his band, and I'm going to do an orchestral concert next year.
That must be an exciting part of the whole success syndrome, to have other people, as well as yourself, interpret the things that the two of you have done.
It can be exciting. It can also be absolutely frustratingly painful.
Would you like to mention examples of either kind?
No, we've had some very... Three Dog Night have done a couple of things which have been adequate, and they've admitted that they've been adequate. They discovered us over here, really. They were the people that sort of brought our songs to the American public, and we're very grateful to them. Lady Samantha, they did very well. Your Song, they did very strangely. But they're the people that discovered us. They took our stuff back with them, and they've been really great to us, you know. Rod Stewart did a good version of Country Comfort, and he got the words wrong, but his voice is too much. Who else? Aaron? I can't think. I've heard so No, not that one. There's been some other adequate versions.
Well, this one looks to be one, at least...
Toe Fat wasn't bad.
Oh, that's right, sure.
That was about the only thing I liked on their album.
This one looks to be one that commercially, at least, will do quite well.
Yeah.
And
this is the first record that's ever been done of ours that I've been sort of up in the air about. I really... Oh, yeah. It's a compliment and a half, you know.
Okay, far out. Let's get into it. This is Aretha Franklin and her song. That's Aretha Franklin and Border Song at WNEW-FM Metro Media Stereo in New York.
Because we're going to say it in Japanese. Yes,
that too. There was an Elton John album released in England that will not be out here officially. Is that the case?
That is true. Good spotting. Before I'd answer that question, I'd just like to say that I'd like to apologise for the noise that we've been creating here, because we have a metal desk and now we've got the Radio Times or something underneath it, and when we put our cups down we won't make any noise. So I'm sorry if all the listeners have been having sort of thunder in the background. Getting back to the album, it won't be released here because we've got so many albums to come out soon that it won't. We haven't got time, any sort of point where we could release it, and it's doing very well on import. Get it at your local import stores, folks. It's 2 years old, and it cost $1,200 to make. It was made in the smallest studio in London, practically, and it was very rough, but it's a very nostalgic album. I like it. There's one track that Bernie and I really hate, which is awful, and if you buy the album, it really is awful. Don't play the track. The track's called Hymn 2000, and it's Bernie and I at our worst. Really, it's just when we come out of that stage, Bernie's lyrics were psychedelic rubbish, and my song was sort of painful type Dylan thing, and it was awful. But the rest of the album is tolerable, and if you're sort of into I must have it because I got another one. It's not a bad album, it really isn't. The cover's dreadful. No, but apart from that, rush out and buy it. The cover really is dreadful.
Releasing it now because it'd be just flooding the kind of market.
I mean, we have a new album out in
January,
January,
out soon.
and we have a film soundtrack album out in February, folks.
For what?
For a film called Friends. We did this. This is what we did when we went back to England after being in America the last time. We had to record the score, and what we did, we recorded the score with the film, and then we sat down because the people wanted an album, a soundtrack album. We said, right. Soundtrack albums are a con. You get a soundtrack album and you hear a bit of a motor car or something like for 2 seconds, and then it's all bits and pieces. It's not an album. It's just, let's try and make a bit more money on the music. So we said, all right. Well, we wrote 3 main songs for the film, and there's another 2 sequences, one a tape recorder sequence and one a radio sequence, in which there's 10 seconds of music. And so we wrote 2 separate songs, and we re-recorded them. We recorded everything for the album. And one of the songs that's on the 10-second sequence lasts for 6 minutes on the album, and the other song lasts for 4.5. So one side of the album is completely an Elton John thing, and the other side is Paul Buckmaster, who did the arrangements on this album as well. He's just doing variations on the theme, and also a 10-minute fugue which he wrote for the film, and it's really just basically an Elton John Paul Buckmaster album, which is good because it sort of survives as an album, and it's not a con. So people that see the film can actually go out and buy the music better than it is in the film, better recorded and in stereo and everything.
What is the film about, and who's responsible?
It's about a heterosexual rhinoceros who falls in love with get out. It's about 2 young kids. It's a Lewis Gilbert film. Get out, Taupin. Stop taking your clothes off in the studio here. Lewis Gilbert has done sort of big mammoth productions like The Elephant and Me, The Adventurers, Alfie, and things like that. This is a basically simple story. There's no stars in it. It's just a boy and a girl, and it's set in France. And they just run away together. They meet up. They're both very lonely. It's a very sweet story, really, and a low-budget film, and it cost 4 and 6 to make. It's basically what we wanted to do. We didn't want to get it. We wanted to get into films, but we didn't want a sort of a big star or anything. We just wanted to get very quietly. Get out. We just wanted to get it very sort of quietly, and this was the perfect vehicle for us. Consequently, we've been invaded by scripts that are absolutely vile, apart from one which is absolutely incredible, which we'll probably be doing the music for. But it's just, the people that did the film, produced the film and directed it, and were in charge of it, were really nice, and so that helped a lot, They gave us completely free hand.
It occurs to me that, in a sense, the success syndrome, at one point in your career must take over. I mean, the mind-boggling possibilities of doing film scores and new albums that are going to be well-received and cover versions by artists that you respect, things that were not possible for you as recently as maybe a year ago. How have you sort of reconciled that according to the way you used to live versus the way you must live now? Has it caused radical changes?
Just the fact that we don't get time to do anything, really. When I went back last time, I got an apartment in London, which is a really nice apartment, didn't have time to do anything. I came out here on holiday 2 days after I moved in, so all the furniture was sort of really just dumped there. And you have to get people to organise. This is the most infuriating, to get other people to have to do things for you and organise, see that everything comes, the furniture comes and things like that. You just don't get 5 minutes to yourself. That's the only thing that's a drag. It's but it'll only be for about 3 or 4 years, because at that time the public will be completely fed up with me.
And at that point, what would you like to be doing?
I'd like to just fade away into obscurity and keep writing songs and get, who knows what I'll be doing in 4 or 5 years' time. It's just, at the moment it's very nice, and it's a nice, I don't think it's altered us, it hasn't altered our heads at all, because I've been 7 years in the business. I've been 7 years, mate. 7 long years. And it really hasn't altered you. If you come up slowly, you appreciate things more, and we've had a lot of hype really pumped into us from all angles, and you just have to let it go one way or the other, don't take any notice of the hype, because if you do, that's it, finished. It just knocks me out that anybody that records our song knocks me out. It's a compliment, and I still get very embarrassed when people rattle on about the album and how good it is, because I know how good it is, and I really don't think it's that good, but, you know how good you are, and there's always somebody around the corner who's much better than you, and that's part of the excitement, Stop yawning, talking. I had this speech all prepared, and there's always someone around the corner who's always better than you, and that's part of the excitement. It's good to find people that are much better than you. It's good to have idols of your own, and
I would, in fact, like to get into some of those influences in a while, but first, have you had a chance to formulate any opinions about the American audiences, or in fact the American people, versus those in your own country?
Yeah, the American audience, the English audiences we've played to, we haven't done many giggling on 20, something like that. They've been really good to us. I didn't think they would be, because they're notoriously blasé, but they've really, without exception, been really good in England. The main difference is that in England you have to go on and you have to make the audience feel good. You have to they're cold when you go on, and they just sit there and, well, that's fair enough, that's your job, you have to go there and entertain them. Over here, you can go on stage and you feel good straight away. It's, without exception, all the gigs I've done over here, the audience has been really nice straight away. You can feel it, they really are good. And that's the main difference between them. And they're less inhibited over here. They really let themselves go. In England, they're very reserved. I went to a Sly and the Family Stone concert not long before I came back. And the audience was up on its feet clapping, but over here, if the same sort of set had been played over here, they were going stark raving mad,
Wow.
Because, it was really wild. So that's the basic difference. English audiences are more reserved, because English people are more reserved anyway.
The 3 tracks that I got into for programming purposes, like 60 Years On, and like Border Song, and like Your Song, that was so far different from where you actually are at on stage that it took me the first 15 minutes of your performance just to get used to the fact that this was not going to be a Van Dyke Parks or you're a raver, Elton.
I know, on stage, I'm completely, that album, people come and think I'm a nice little cuddly man who sits at the piano.
Right, exactly, but this is the song that, at least in my head, changed all that, both live and on the record. Elton John. I haven't seen anyone play the piano with as many different parts of their body as Elton John has since Jerry Lee Lewis about 12 years ago.
And it hurts, folks.
12 minutes before 10 o'clock on a Wednesday, Pete Fornatale at WNEW-FM in New York with Elton John and Bernie Taupin. That is New York, United States radio, Elton. How does it differ from what you used to back home?
Well, it differs a great deal, really, because we've only got one station, and coming on a station like this is unbelievable, really, because you just don't get... groups in England have a really hard time getting played. Like groups like Juicy Lucy and people like that. Their records get in the charts only because of their personal appearances, because they don't get played or anything like that on the radio, because it's a bubblegum, really, and there's only about 3 or 4 programs a week that cater for the minorities. Well, not it's a great majority, in fact, now, of people that buy albums instead of singles. In fact, there's no program that even plays albums. So when our album came out, it got a great deal of play. It was the same, roughly just after the McCartney album came out, and it got nearly as many plays, 35 plays, which is incredible, because it's hard enough to get a single play, let alone an album. So people that bring albums out have really got hardly any chance if they're not on the road. That's why I had to go on the road, because if you're not on the road in England, you can't sell your albums. That's why people like Black Sabbath and Deep Purple sell a lot of albums. Not because they get played on the radio, but because they have to go out on the road and get their following, yeah?
Well, what is interesting to me is that some of that same formula applies here. I mean, people, in fact, do get introduced to new talent as a result of the radio medium. However, most acts really particularly in the underground, take a tremendous amount of personal appearance time. Now, prior to this current tour, your shots here have been relatively limited, and still the album, rolls along, snowballing, as it were.
It's a word of mouth. Ours is a sort of word of mouth type album. People buy it and they say, listen, have you heard this? And they play it to their friends, and it sort of snowballs like that.
Yeah.
Primarily, it's a business. It's a music business album, first of all. That's how it started. People in the business said, oh, wow, Zonksville, this is the greatest thing since Al Jolson sang Mammy or something. And that snowballed, and it's just happening like that. Areas, it hasn't sold very well in some areas, and they're just beginning to catch on to it now, which is a bit late, but I mean, better late than never, folks. And it's just snowballing like that. It's not an instant. I mean, I haven't played in New York, for example, and they ordered 11,000 albums last week, so I haven't played there yet. And when I do play there, and they probably won't order anymore. That'll be it, folks.
Back home.
Back home. The people in our audience will get their first opportunity, I guess, to see you at the Fillmore. What are the dates for that album?
The 20th and the 21st of November with Leon Russell and Mackenzie Spring.
Are you going to do like a separate thing, or are there plans for...
Well, I think we'll end up playing together. Dirty beasts. No, Leon has ordered 2 grand pianos, and I ordered 12. I think I better top it. No,
Success hasn't spoiled you at all.
No. It'll end up by doing a jam. I went up to his house in Los Angeles and knocked on the door, and he told me to bugger off. No, I think it'll end up in a jam. He's my idol, so to be on the same stage as him, I should be like sort of on the air. But can I light my clown up? I mean, nobody can see it, but my little clown lights up.
Fantastic, all right?
I can ring my bell. No, we'll probably get together and do something. Look, Mackenzie Spring are a really good group as well.
They are fun.
And a really fine group, and they've been nosed up by record companies, I think, or something like that.
We won't touch that one.
We won't touch that one.
No way.
But they're a really fine group, and I'm looking forward to seeing them again, because I've seen them once, and they knocked me out. So.
This is probably the hardest one to be at all specific about, but who would you count among your own musical influences, either one of you?
Robbie.
I mentioned Jerry Lee Lewis before.
And Bob Dyload, Elmer Schlutz, the organ grind. No, my influences go back to Little Richard, Jerry Lewis, Bill Haley, all the rock and roll thing, and then Tamla Motown.
What I don't understand is how you could have been exposed to that. See that?
Well, I'm 23 years old and getting on. I can remember my mother brought in the first sort of 78. I used to listen to things like Bonnie Lou and the Tennessee Wigwam. That's how far I go back. And Guy Mitchell and Frankie Lane. Those are the first 78s that I really listened to. K-Star, Wheel of Fortune. How about that? So the first 2, I can remember my mother coming back with ABC Boogie in one hand and Heartbreak Hotel in another hand, and she fell over the step and broke them. No, they're on 78, and they really turned me on, and she was very excited about it as well, because my parents are sort of my mother especially is sort of quite modern thinking in music, and that exposed me to rock and roll, and then I got into the Little Richard, Eddie Cochran, Buddy Holly thing, and Jerry Lee Lewis, and then I went from that to soul music, Otis Redding, Irma Franklin, Aretha Franklin, people like that, and Motown, and now my tastes are sort of, I like everything. I think the only thing I really haven't got in my collection is middle-of-the-road stuff, Engelbert Humperdinck type stuff, and traditional jazz, but I've got everything from Tibetan monks playing the gong backwards to Led Zeppelin and things like that. Motown's been a big influence on me. I love Motown records, and also the early Atlantic stuff. You have to listen. We listen to everything that comes out. Really, we have an import record shop in London, and we go and listen to practically everything that comes out. You have to, because otherwise, people, some people will never get heard if they,
It's got a good beat and you can dance to it. I give it a 9.
If you can do 3/4 time and a 7/8 section, you really know stuff.
Bernie, you picked this next selection. Would you like to play DJ for a minute and introduce it?
It's just that I like it.
Well, introduce it. Tell the public what it is.
Yeah, it's Jesse Winchester, Brand New Tennessee Waltz.
That's Jesse Winchester, picked and programmed for you by Bernie Taupin. Brand New Tennessee Waltz from his solo album. It's 3 minutes before 10 o'clock, and I really, literally can't believe that. You just begin to cover territory and your time runs out. That seems to be the way it goes. I would like to ask you quickly about the new album, Elton. When is it due? When did you finish it?
It's been finished for quite some time. It was recorded over a period of time, whereas the other one was set for space of time. It'll be out in January. About the first, as soon as it can come out in January, it'll be out. We didn't release it before because the earliest it could have been released over here would have been about the second week in December, which is useless because of the Christmas thing.
Yeah.
So you just decided, it's out in England in 2 weeks' time, so obviously people are imported. It's called Tumbleweed Connection, and it's far different from this last album. It's only 3 tracks with strings on it, and even they're on funky, some of the things are on funky things. It's mostly a funky type album and a quiet album. I'm very pleased with it. The sound is 100% better, and I think people will like it because it's different. We couldn't have done another album like that one. So basically, it's just a funky thing.
I noticed that you can really see the changes in Paul Simon's life according to the material that he recorded before being part of the phenomenon known as Simon & Garfunkel and afterward. Are you finding, Bernie, that the lyrical content of your songs is different now as a result of the things that have happened to you in the last year?
The thing is that, the next album is kind of like songs that were written about a year ago. And during the last year, we haven't written as much as we kind of did, say, a year ago, because we've got so much to do, and we've been doing so much in the last year. It's just kind of cut down on the whole thing. But I think kind of the experience of kind of travelling, will change the kind of content a lot.
The lyrics are much simpler.
Yeah.
They're getting simpler all the time.
Yeah, right.
It's important.
Yeah, I find that you can say so much in very short kind of passages by being very simple and kind of stretching the whole thing out and kind of making it very complicated.
Well, if the public response to the kinds of things you're doing is any indication, that is just where music seems to be at as we enter the 70s. I really hate to do this.
Buy the Redbone album. Yeah, I had to sneak it in somewhere. Buy the Redbone album.
Our audience will get the chance to see you at the film later on this month, and they would be missing a treat if they were not in attendance. Thank you both very much for coming by.
Thank you. Let's just say goodbye.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Pete. Oh.
That's Elton John and Bernie Taupin. Pete Fortitell back tomorrow between 6 a.m. and 10. Jonathan Schwartz is next over WNEW-FM, Metro Media Stereo.
WNEW-FM.